Pearl's story. Pearl stepped off the ship and into a world that felt nothing like home. The cold air wrapped around her like an unwelcome embrace, a stark contrast to the warm, golden sun she had left behind in Grenada. She pulled her coat tighter around her small frame, shivering from more than just the weather. This was England, the land of opportunity, of promises, and of a new life. But as she soon learned, it was also a land of hostility, loneliness, and struggle. Pearl had always dreamt of adventure beyond the shores of Grenada, but leaving home had been bittersweet. She had said goodbye to her mother, her sisters, and the familiar comfort of a community where she was always surrounded by laughter and love. The decision to come to the UK had been made with hope, a chance to work, to earn, and to build a better future for herself and her family. Her first impressions of England was the sky, dull, grey, and heavy. The streets bustled with people who barely looked at her, their faces unreadable, their expressions cold. The buildings stood tall but lifeless, and the roads stretched endlessly in unfamiliar directions. It was nothing like the vibrant, colourful world she had known back home. As she walked through the foreign streets, her thoughts often drifted back to Grenada. She remembered the small smell and the sea breeze, the sound of calypso music drifting through the air, the laughter of children playing in the yard. She missed the taste of fresh mangoes and the simple joy of sitting on the porch with her family, sharing stories. These memories were both a source of comfort and a reminder of all she had left behind. Finding a place to live was the first challenge. Landlords refused to rent, and Pearl encountered rejection after rejection. Eventually, she found a cramped room in a house shared with other immigrants from the Caribbean. The conditions were poor: peeling wallpaper, a single stove shared by many, and the constant draft that swept through the old windows. But it was shelter, and it was a start. Work was another battle. Pearl had been a teacher back in Grenada, but here her qualifications meant nothing. She was offered jobs as a cleaner, a factory worker, or a nurse's assistant, with no other options. She took what she could find, waking up at dawn to scrub floors in a hospital where the patients she cared for looked at her with suspicion. Some refused to be touched by her. Others made crude remarks about her accent, her skin, and her very presence. Racism was everywhere. Shopkeepers ignored her when she tried to buy groceries. Strangers hurled insults at her in the streets. Even children, innocent yet shaped by their parents' prejudices, would point and whisper. Pearl had never felt so unseen, yet so scrutinized all at once. If the racism was painful, the loneliness was unbearable. Back in Grenada, there was always someone to talk to, someone to laugh with, someone to share a meal with. Here, Pearl would return to her tiny room after long hours of work and sit in silence, missing the warmth of home. Letters from her family took weeks to arrive, and when they did, she clutched them like lifelines, reading each word over and over. Her faith became her refuge. On Sundays, she attended a small church where other Caribbean immigrants gathered. In that sacred space, she found a piece of home, the familiar hymns, the comforting accents, the shared struggles. It was there she met Miss Ruby, an older woman who had arrived in England years before. Ruby took Pearl under her wing, offering advice, a listening ear, and the kind of care only other Caribbean women could provide. Through Ruby, Pearl met others who had walked the same path, men and women who had left their homes behind in search of a brighter future. They formed a community, supporting each other through the challenges. They cooked together, shared stories of home, and celebrated small victories like finding better jobs or moving into better houses. With time, Pearl learned to navigate her new world. She studied at night, determined to gain qualifications that would allow her to work in education again. Slowly, she built a community, other immigrants who had also come in search of a better life. They shared meals, stories, and dreams, supporting one another through the hardships. Despite the prejudice she faced, Pearl refused to let it define her. She worked tirelessly, saving money to send home to her family. She challenged discrimination where she could, standing firm in her dignity and self-worth, and eventually she secured a job as a teacher's assistant, one step closer to reclaiming the career she had once loved. Years passed, and Pearl's resilience paid off. She became a teacher, educating young minds and making a difference in the lives of children, some of whom looked like her, others who had never known someone like her before. She taught them not just mathematics and history, but compassion, understanding, and strength. Though the UK had been unwelcoming at first, Pearl carved out a place for herself. She turned the struggle into strength, the loneliness into connection, and the prejudice into purpose. And when she looked back on her journey, she saw not just hardship, but triumph. As Pearl grew older, she became a mentor to young immigrants, guiding them through the challenges of settling in a new country. She volunteered at a community centre, offering free tutoring and careers advice. She spoke at schools, sharing her story to inspire the next generation to push through adversity. Her influence stretched beyond the Caribbean culture. She worked with advocacy groups to fight discrimination, ensuring that the struggles she faced would not be repeated by those who came after her. Through her efforts, she helped shape a more inclusive society. Pearl's story was not just her own, it was the story of many. The immigrants who arrived with dreams in their hearts, who faced cruelty yet persevered, who built lives despite the odds. But as she stood in front of her classroom, watching the young faces looking up at her, she knew she had made it. She had turned a foreign land into home. As she walked through the streets, now filled with the voices of people from all backgrounds, Pearl saw progress. The struggles had not been in vain, and though she still missed Grenada, she knew she had left a lasting impact, one that would live on in the hearts of those she had helped.